So by the end of this video, I'm going to actually choose what my number one amp would be. If I could only have one amp, what would it be? Last year, I had a real amazing journey when it came to buying and trying amps. I've bought and sold quite a few, and I've kept quite a few. Some of them I don't ever really play. And today was a chance for me to sort of dig out a few of the amps that I don't play and remind myself why. And by the end of this video, I'll have got to that end decision. If I could only have one, what would it be? Now there are 3 or 4 in the running for that top spot. But first of all, I want to sort of take you through the few that aren't really at the top of my mind most of the time and tell you why. Starting with that Marshall. This is a lovely Marshall JTM 45 reissue. It's a Plexi, and I feel very awkward playing it. It really shows up my lack of ability. You know, I'm always honest about things like that. Playing this particular amp doesn't feel comfortable. It very clearly shows everything you do, every part of every string that you touch, and it has no reverb to cover it up, and it stays pretty spiky throughout most of its range, its overdrive range, and if you don't know what you're doing, it gets really muddy. So for me, it's an amp that I wanted to have. I wanted to have an old style up Marshall amp. It's something I love looking at. I just don't plug it in very often. It's not for me. It was the amp that definitely persuaded me that I really should have reverb. I've still made the mistake of buying some non-reverb amps. I might show you another one later, but for me, I need that. I need that comfort blanket, as it were, to cover up, my inadequacies. So, yeah. So the next amp that won't make it to the top of the list, but actually I'm really fond of it and I do play it quite often, is the Tone King Sky King. You know, this amp has everything you'd possibly want. It has 2 channels. It has built-in attenuators for each channel, and they're really top-notch attenuators. And it's got tremolo. It's got wonderful tremolo, but it's lacking a bit of liveliness, which I didn't know when I bought this. As in, I enjoyed it for about 6 months. It was just incredible. And then I had the chance to try out some other amps, which we'll get to. Let's just hear a few seconds of that tremolo, though, and that reverb. Do you know, actually listening back to that Sky King, I forgot it's got a beautiful, beautiful tone. It's really rounded. And if I was going to use it for anything, it would probably be for recording, where I think it comes across incredibly well. In terms of playing, it doesn't have quite as enough directness, you know, to it that I would love it to have. But it's an astonishing amp, and for recording especially. And for live situations, small live situations, because I think it has a really warm tone when it's played sort of quite gently. But anyway, in the same vein, I also have 3 Fender amps. I've got a 68 reissue Vibrolux, and I've got the 64 hand-wired Princeton. And then the one I want to show you is the Vibroverb, the 64 Vibroverb, which is famous for being one of the Stevie Ray Vaughan amps, you know. There were only 600 of these made. The early ones were brown face, and this is black face. And it's, you know, it's a proper old style amp. It makes quite a lot of noises. I probably wouldn't want to take it out and play it live. It's pretty expensive. It's pretty rare, desirable, I guess. And, you know, it can't do everything, but it does what it does so well. Yeah, let's get a little taste of that. I'll explain, though, why this wouldn't be my one amp. that Vibroverb has that really recognizable tone, especially for a Strat. And so it's got a very sort of narrow feel to me, in the sense that anytime I would plug that in, I'm trying to get a specific tone, and it does that incredibly beautifully. And I'm not someone that can play Stevie Ray Vaughan stuff. I've never taken the time to really learn it, and you know, Strats aren't the thing I concentrate on, but I just love having this amp and being able to play it occasionally. And you know, one day probably will take the time to try and learn some music that really fits with that amp well. But if you're someone that loves that particular Fender tone, you can't beat that. It's really, really awesome. It does have great dynamics, like most Fender amps. You can play it gently and get it to break up without changing much apart from the feel that you're playing with. So really, you know, it's a very cool thing to have. So talking of hot-rodded Fender type amps, there are two amps in particular that I've really, really enjoyed having that aren't going to make it to the top either, and that is the Morgan MVP 23 and the Two Rock Classic Reverb Signature. Now, completely different price points, completely different sounding amps, and the MVP may be more of the really smooth, dumbly sort of sound, and the Classic Reverb Signature more of the hot-rodded Fender type, Stevie Ray Vaughan type of sound. So let's hear the Morgan, because it's quite different to what we've just heard before. Whereas the Classic Reverb, you can do that really stratty thing. You can also use the Classic Reverb as a pedal platform. You can use it for all your guitars, any type of guitar. It would be a real professional person's amp, which is obviously a little bit above my pay grade. But when I do plug it in, it's sublime. Let's hear the Morgan. I've really enjoyed using that. So I feel like I've struggled to do this amp justice in the recording here. I just couldn't quite capture what I'm hearing in the room, so I wanted to explain it a bit better to you. This amp is not very powerful, it's quite small, and I really wish it was a 35 or 40 watt amp. It does lose its headroom quite quickly and get a bit muddled, and as you turn the power down and increase the volume or the gain, it can get quite mushy. So you have to be careful how you use it. Luckily, the tone controls and everything are pretty sensitive, so you've got a wide range of use. Now, in the room here, what I heard was beautiful harmonics. I mean, every note had this sort of furry edge that sort of lingered, and even though it doesn't have reverb, this amp, somehow it feels almost like it does, you know, it's bigger than it should be. So it's a really clever amp. I couldn't use it as my only amp, it just doesn't give me quite enough, but it's tantalizing, right? It's so close. So I'd be really, really interested in trying bigger Morgan amps, even though there'll be a different style of amp. I think Morgan probably make really fantastic amps. So, you know, I don't think I did it justice, and you can't quite hear what I heard in this recording, but I tried my hardest. And as I said, the Two Rock Classic Reverb Signature is also just below being the amp I'm sort of thinking could be my last ever amp, right? But yeah, we're going to move on now to the sort of final two, the battle, the ones we've been waiting to get to. These are the two amps that I always have plugged in, always have sort of set up, mic'd up, ready to go, and that I love playing. They're my sort of amps that I turn on and I feel like, you know, this is, if I never have another amp in my life, one of these two amps would definitely just make me happy anyway. One of them, though, has creeped ahead quite a lot to the point that I don't really enjoy as much playing any other amp that I've got apart from the one. We'll get there in a second, I'll tell you what it is. Okay, so if you've watched this channel much before, you probably know that I have a 2-rock Bloomfield Drive, and for a large part of the last year since I've had it, it's been my go-to amp, my favourite amp, the most intriguing amp that I've got, because of all the amps I've got, I never even knew what was it meant to sound like. You know, I bought this amp on the back of a Joey Landreth clip that I found on YouTube, and I mean, obviously he made it sound just ridiculously good, but he'd make anything sound ridiculously good. And even online, no one seems to know what this amp is really meant to be about. You know, a lot of amps are based on other amps. You know, the classic Reverb signature is based on really Fendery things, you know, black faces and, you know, all that stuff, and it does all the Stevie Ray Vaughan type of sounds, and it, you know, but the Bloomfield Drive, just not sure. I know it's obviously Dumble inspired, but it's its own thing. It's also the most frustrating amp. It's an incredible pedal platform, definitely the best pedal platform I've had. Its clean sounds are out of this world. The reverb on it is 1,000 times better even than the classic Reverb signature. Honestly, it's incredible. It's a big, expansive, roomy sound of reverb, which is quite different to the other amp that you're going to see in a minute. This is like, honestly, the word is angelic. If you want a beautiful sound, you use the Bloomfield Drive's clean. But it's not supple, right? You have to work at it. And sometimes it's just mesmerizing, and I sit there playing it for ages. And sometimes I'm like, no, I want it to go creamier. And in a second, you're going to hear the lead channel as well, which I never really use the lead channel on this app because I normally use pedals. So, but today with my Les Paul, which is my favorite guitar, the R9, I use the lead channel. So you'll hear what that sounds like. I never really use it, and it's definitely divisive as a sound, this lead channel. It's a little bit square, if that makes sense, right? It's not smooth, it's not creamy, but it records really well, actually, better than I thought it was going to. I've just been listening to it while I'm editing, and it's made me fall in love with the amp all over again. And I think, you know, ultimately, if I was a gigging musician, which I'm not at the moment anyway, and I had a chance to, I'd probably want a 2-amp setup with this amp and the other amp that we're about to talk about. Let's hear a bit more of this. But yeah, if this is an amp you're thinking about, I'd say it's not as versatile as the classic Reverb signature. That amp is a do-it-all. Inside it has so many different sounds, and I find the Bloomfield is different. The Bloomfield has its amazing clean, and I'm getting into its lead sound. It's not perfect, but it's so tweakable that you'll find yourself getting lost. You know, the tone controls on a 2-rock are beyond tweakable. But so it doesn't sound, for me, it doesn't just sound perfect in any setting, right? You have to work at it. Let's hear a bit of that lead channel as well, and then I'm pretty sure I've decided that the next amp is the amp. If I could only have one, I'd have that. Okay, it's taken me a while really to come to terms with the fact that the Bloomfield Drive wouldn't be the amp I'd have if I'd only have one. I mean, I honestly felt like an emotional connection to this amp. I'd played it for so many hours. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I absolutely I love pretty much every amp I've ever tried. I love, you know, because they do something to you, for you. Sometimes they only last for like half an hour and then you think, okay, it's not for me. And sometimes it lasts, you know, for a long time. The Bloomfield Drive, I'll never get rid of that amp. It's just too fantastic. But this next amp, some of you will know what this is if you've been on the channel much. I bought it. I turned it on the same day, plugged in my Les Paul. And man, that thing made me feel good. And then for some reason, I just put it away for a while. I didn't quite understand the amp. And I stuck back with the Bloomfield Drive for a long time, right? For about 3 months after I bought the amp, I barely played it. And then one day I thought, I'm going to plug this thing in and I'm going to only use this amp for about a month. And that month turned into 2 months. And pretty much every video I made after that, at that point, was only on this amp. And it just, well, let's hear a bit and then I'll talk about it a bit more. So here's the thing, you know when you've found the right piece of gear because it just makes everything easier. So recording this video, I've been plugging in amps for the last day and a half that I haven't used much for a long time. Normally because I enjoyed them at the beginning and then at some point I thought I want more, I need something different. So whilst I love something about each of those amps, it just didn't give me everything I wanted. Well, sometimes I'm spending half an hour, 45 minutes recording a 1 to 2 minute clip over and over again because I'm just not feeling inspired, right? I'm not a professional musician and I'm not, you know, I know my playing has got a ceiling that's not that high, but it's either sometimes feels very difficult to do it and it comes out quite lackluster, you know, from my point of view. But I just sat down with this amp and I recorded whatever I needed to record with it in 5 minutes. No retakes. It just felt right. You know, my fingers moved the way I wanted them to. The sounds that I wanted to came out, and it was, yeah, made me feel really, really happy. There was no stress involved. So plugging in this amp, the Rift Ainsley Lister, it's now become just my sound that I want. I don't need pedals with it, and it's actually caused me a lot of problems for this channel, because the whole point of this channel was a sort of journey to finding my tone. I never actually thought I'd get there and be really happy, and well, I did. I found it. This Les Paul and this amp together just give me everything I want. So I'm sort of riding that wave at the moment and loving it, and I know, you know, we all know that we get to a point where we want something else, and I just don't know when that will happen. So this is it. This is the amp. If I could only have one, it would be this one. And if I'd known at the time when I bought this on a whim, having seen Ainsley Lister playing on that pedal show. I know Ainsley now. He's given me some guitar lessons and stuff, and he's a really, really lovely guy. Not a big pedal user, and this amp by itself just sounds like you've got pedals plugged in, and that makes sense. Yeah, I bought this on a whim, so I just bought one they had at Anderton's. They had this 1x12. I didn't actually realise it came in a head with cabinet, could be 2x12, or there's even a combo that's 2x12. So if I was ever a gigging musician in future, I would definitely buy a 2x12 of this. I just can't imagine how great that would sound. The reverb on here is just spectacular for me. Often with grittier, more lead tones, reverb gets in the way. So the Bloomfield Drive, when you go into the lead channel, it massively turns down the reverb automatically. This amp, the reverb is so springy, you know, it just flicks back at you, and it's so great to play with. It doesn't get in the way. It's got so much oomph. I mean, I can't play this amp using much of its power. It's so powerful for its size. Unbelievable. Really responsive to finger picking, really responsive to your guitar's volume. The right tone controls that you can't really muck things up, but you can make them better for a room. I just love it. I'm going to do my next video next week is going to be a full review of this amp. I've been promising to do it for a long time. I even feel excited talking about the amp. I love the way it looks. I love the form factor. I love the way it sounds. With pretty much every guitar I've tried, but funnily enough for me, a Les Paul with it just is what I'm happy with. So I'm going to close out with some of my favourite tones from it. Well, I'm not changing the setting on the amp. It's all one setting. Just playing around with the guitar a bit more if you want to hear that. But yeah, it's been a really fun day and a half doing this, getting back in touch with some of the amps I haven't plugged in for a while, and really reassuring myself that actually I could sell all of those apart from the Bloomfield and this, and I'd be super happy. And one day in the near future, in a video, I'm going to put them together in a stereo, and we're going to see what that sounds like. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you're new to the channel, or you've forgotten, I'm giving away this flipping awesome pedal that I'm really sad to see go. I mean, it's even got my Velcro tape on it. I just love this pedal. I'm giving this away when I get another 100 subs. At 3,500 subs anywhere in the world. All you need to do is publicly subscribe and make a comment, and you're in for the running. I do the this is probably my 4th giveaway, is it? And I do it on a video, so it's all legit. Someone different wins it every time. So yeah, this will be going off soon. So anyway, thanks for watching.